So I'm on a journey to become a full-time professional artist, and that doesn't mean that I am starting from scratch. So I started working in art about 25 years ago. So this is going to be a little trip down memory lane. Back then, it was kind of more of a sort of part-time gig, and it's been a part-time gig pretty much ever since that. So I was just kind of going through some of my old projects and things, and then I found this, which was my first ever sort of bigger project. So this was Tennis Stars, which was to be a Game Boy Advance game back in 2000. Well, the contract was written in 2001. I think the game was released in 2002-ish, about that. I was looking through some of my old artwork, and it was just interesting, just going through like some of the old bits. Like there was a style sheet that I came up with just to sort of work out what I was doing with it. And this was okay. I was at a level at this point, even though my art wasn't perfect, that I managed to get a job with this company to produce this game, and or the artwork and character designs for the game. And then I started working on individual characters. So yeah, it's quite funny how back in the day it was all just drawn, pencil, paper, working out winning poses, and had to do like losing poses as well. So yeah, these were all designs drawn in pencil, which I think I either inked them digitally, or maybe I just inked them traditionally using pen. I can't really remember. But yeah, back in the day, like I used to work quite light with pencil, so maybe these aren't coming through. So I remember reading that Joe Madureira, the comic book artist that worked for, did X-Men. I think he started his career when he was about 16 years old working for X-Men, and then moved into sort of Image Comics, doing comics like Battle Chasers or whatever. Basically, I liked his artwork, even though I didn't basically emulate his style. But I remember him saying in the back of one of his comics that he worked using a 2H pencil on paper. So I thought, okay, I'll go down the same route. So that's why the line art is very faint, very light. But 2H is actually very good for inking over the top of, since it's so light. So that is the thing. But yeah, I think it's just interesting going through some of the old artwork just to see kind of what I was doing, where I was at. And I think given the age of some of this stuff, it was okay. It was okay. Because the thing is, back in the day, 2002 or whenever these bits of artworks were originally produced, it was okay for it not to be top tier. Like, you basically, because the internet wasn't really a big deal back then, if you had a company, I think, this was a UK based company in England that were producing this game, and if you had a UK company and you were looking for someone to collaborate with, you would basically look for someone literally locally who pretty much lived on your doorstep, or was at the forefront, cutting edge of technology, and actually had their own website. And I was, I guess, quite an early adopter of the internet, and one of the originators. So I had my own website, and I put my artwork up on it, and this was how the company actually found me. So if it wasn't for sort of getting in there early, I would never have been able to work on this cool little game. So yeah, fun little project. And I then went on to do a cover design, and yeah, good times. So it's funny how just the world has changed with like art and design over the years. Obviously, I don't think anyone really draws on paper anymore. It's just not a thing. But I suppose, to some degree, it is worth everyone starting that way, because I think you kind of just learn to, well, firstly, you don't need to fork out on graphics tablets and digital software, and you're not staring at a screen all day, which is probably good for your eyes. So, it's good that way. But I think it just teaches you, I don't know, it just teaches you how to draw without feeling as though you can just, edit, undo type thing. So yeah, there's benefits to the old paper thing, but yeah. Anyway, I don't know. I think there's some sort of but there's a lot of transferable knowledge even back then that I think still applies now when it comes to creating these kinds of projects. Like the contract I originally showed, that was, I mean, I don't know what the industry is like now, because I think most bigger game studios would have people working in-house, and anyone that works freelance is probably going to work for a set fee, but not necessarily. I mean, this is quite a small game studio that were working, with other collaborators, and at the time we had a royalty arrangement, which was basically a case of they'll send me an advance, so they'll send me, say, £1,000, and then once the game starts selling, they'll generate a small royalty. Let's just say 20 pence per game, and I would get 20 pence per game for having created the artwork. And once I have enough 20 pences that reach the £1,000 threshold, I then start gaining additional royalties. I'm not going to try and do the maths, but let's just say it was like 40,000 or 50,000 copies needed to be sold, so I'd get my £1,000 back. As soon as 51,000 copies got sold, I'd then receive £200 or whatever it is. My maths is really bad, but yeah, that was how that worked. And I'm not sure. I mean, it's been a while since I did artwork for like game companies. I mean, the last one I did was it was a long time ago, and that wasn't a royalty-based deal. With that, it was flat fees per character design or per asset design. So it was a case of, right, okay, we're drawing male character, £300, female character, £300, some graphic symbols, £300 for 3 of them. There was, an electronic device, £300. There was a background, £300. So it's kind of like each thing was just being totted up, and then there was a sum at the end of it. Yeah, basically years ago I decided that's kind of it. I'm sort of pulling out of the sort of commission thing, because it just didn't seem like a good use of my time. So like I say, I could work on a character design for a game, spend a lot of time sort of coming up with the idea for it, and then making it nice and shiny and glossy so that it could be used in their mobile apps or games or whatever. And I would get, like I say, £300. I mean, this was going back in the day, but I don't think prices have really changed for like these sort of smaller startup companies. They don't have a lot of cash, and they can't, if they're looking for some leading cutting edge, 1%ers that are already in the industry, already killing it, already have a ton of credentials, would typically charge thousands of pounds for a bit of artwork. I think if they're looking for sort of a lower tier artist, that's pretty much probably still a sort of given. And personally, I just learned that I could either create a character for £300, for anyone outside the UK, that's like, I don't know, 260 euros or $250 US, something like that. So yeah, I could either do that, or I could create an art print. So I could create my own character or maybe some fan art, and then try and sell prints of that artwork, or sell that artwork onto products, mugs or mouse mats or t-shirts or something like that. And over time, I would eventually sell more than £300 per design. So that was just how things evolved for me. It's not to say that commissions aren't worth doing. I think they're good practice to just, work for other people. And if you're quick at working, I'm really, really slow, but if you happen to be quite quick at producing artwork, then yeah, do it. Because if you can throw out a full, coloured character design in sort of 4 hours, and maybe get 2 done a day, and if you're getting £300, that's £600 a day. You could be making mega bucks. For me, it would take me, 3 or 4 days maybe. So that's just me being a perfectionist. That's partly my workflow, my style. Like I say, I would draw something like this. So go away, draw the line art, and that's maybe after a few little sketches or whatever, just sort of coming up with the idea. And then I've got to ink the line art, either traditionally or digitally. And I always feel like it has to be good at super high resolutions, so that if it's ever blown up, you don't see the wispy little lines that didn't connect, or, that's just my perfectionist nature. So then I'd have to go away, colour it, be a case of sort of colouring, with a colouring book, colouring between the lines, laying the flat tones, and then sort of working out where the shading's going, and then rendering. And the rendering process can take like half the entire span of the image creation. So that's just the way that I ended up working, and it is a way of working that just derived from the comic book industry, because that is kind of what I grew up with when I was a sort of, I don't know, 12, 13, 14-year-old boy. I used to like comics, and I used to see how they would draw stuff, and then sometimes in the comics you would see, just black and white pages that was just the penciling, and then just sometimes the inking. And it was very clear, you open up a comic and you look at the inside page of who created it, and it's like, right, you have a penciler, you have an inker, you have a colorist, maybe you have an effects guy, then you obviously have the writer or writers, an editor, a letterist, and that was pretty much it. You'd always have small teams of up to 10 people with American comics. Japanese comics, if it was a small Japanese comic, it might just be one person. I didn't really get into reading. I didn't get into reading manga until a little bit later, sort of when I was in my sort of mid to late teens. But yeah, the principle's still the same. You're going to draw with pencil to start off with, and then you're going to ink over the top of it, and then lettering over the top of that. Back in the day when I was reading manga, you also had maybe someone who would come in and add screen tones, which is like a sort of semi-transparent sheet of texture or greyness over the top of certain areas of the image, which makes manga look like manga. These days it's pretty much all digital. But yeah, it's funny just to see how things have evolved over time, and sometimes it's just quite interesting just having that little trip down memory lane, looking at old projects and seeing if they can sort of inspire you to work on new things, or maybe there's some old ideas locked away there that you're like, oh yeah, that's quite good. Or oh, I remember the time when I used to be enthusiastic about this thing. I'd forgotten I even liked that. So that can then inspire you to create stuff in the present day. So anyway, thanks for checking these out. I enjoyed going through the old bits and pieces that I've worked on. It's always fun to look back, and until next time, I'll see you then.